He was one of the first founding fathers. He served as commander-in-chief during the American Revolution. His face is on the U.S. dollar bill and was the first president of the United States. George Washington was born on February 22nd, 1732, in Westmoreland County, Virginia. Washington came from a fairly large family. He had a total of 7 siblings. His father was Augustine Washington, who died in 1743 when George was only 11, and his mother was Mary Ball Washington, who lived to be 82 years old. He was homeschooled and was very intelligent. By his early teen years, he had already mastered growing tobacco, stock raising, and surveying. After his father had died, he lived with one of his half-brothers, Lawrence, at Mount Vernon, who had a very positive impact on his life. Another influence of Washington's life was the Fairfax family. In 1748, with the help from Lord Fairfax, Washington was sent with a party that spent months surveying Fairfax land in the Shenandoah Valley. His experience made him appreciate the valley and land and made him resourceful. Washington received an appointment as official surveyor of Culpeper County that was certified by the College of William and Mary. His brother Lawrence later on became very ill and died from tuberculosis in July 1752. His land was passed down to George, who was only 20 years old at the time. Washington showed early signs of natural leadership and was appointed him duty and ranked him major in the Virginia militia. On October 31st, 1753, Governor Robert Dinwiddie sent Washington to Fort Le Boeuf to warn French troops to leave, that they were in territory claimed by Britain. But the French ignored him, and Washington returned to Virginia's colonial capital. In April, Dinwiddie sent Washington back with troops to set up a post at Great Meadows and to remove the French, which caused the French and Indian War. The French fought back with a stronger and larger force and defeated Washington and his men. He surrendered and was soon released. In 1755, he joined British General Edward Braddock's army in Virginia, who planned to attack the French. Washington managed to escape injury during the attack and led the broken army back to safety. Washington was made commander of all Virginia troops only at the age 23, but his health began to fail and was sent home in 1757. In 1758, he returned to his position but wasn't satisfied and resigned his commission at the very end of the year. A month after leaving the army, he married Martha Dandridge Custis on January 6, 1759. Martha had 2 children, Jackie and Patsy. This was Martha's second marriage and Washington's first marriage. Both of her children had died at an early age. Jackie died from the camp fever at age 27, and Patsy died 8 years earlier from an epileptic seizure. Washington was a big family man and was always working to expand and improve his mansion and his plantation. He experimented with different crops, fertilizers, tools, etc. He eventually expanded his plantation from 2,000 acres to 8,000 acres, consisting of 5 farms with more than 3,000 acres of civilization. George Washington served as a delegate in the First Continental Congress in 1774, which was held in Philadelphia. He became the commander-in-chief in the Continental Army just as the American Revolution began. He was a great commander in the army because he kept his troops going even with very little food, ammunition, and being poorly trained. The colonial forces won some battles over the course of 8 long years fighting, but in October 1781, the Continental forces captured the British troops under Charles Cornwallis in Yorktown, Virginia. After capturing the British, this put an end to the Revolutionary War. In 1783, he gave up his position as commander-in-chief and wanted to resume his life as a farmer and a family man. But a couple years later, in 1787, George Washington was asked to be the first president of the United States because of his great leadership. Then on January 7, 1789, the first presidential election was held, and Washington won easily. Following right behind him was John Adams with the second largest number of votes. He became the first vice president. On April 30th, 1789, George Washington was inaugurated. At this time, the United States had only consisted of 11 states with approximately 4 million people. He worked hard to set examples for fairness, prudence, and integrity. In 1745, Washington put forward the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Jay. John Jay signed the first bill establishing a national bank. He then appointed Alexander Hamilton as Secretary of the Treasury and Thomas Jefferson as Secretary of State. Washington served 2 terms of his presidency. During his first term, he worked hard to diminish the nation's debt. Towards the end of his second term, he composed his farewell address to the American people. He then retired and turned the government over to John Adams in March 1797, and wanted to live his last years as a farmer at Mount Vernon. On December 12, 1799, Washington was out on horseback in a severe snowstorm inspecting his farm. Dinner time came around and he went back inside, ate, and went to sleep. The next day he woke up with a severe sore throat and was not feeling well at all. The next day, on December 4th, 1799, George Washington passed away. He was a hero to many people, and this had a lot of grief on people. His funeral was held on December 18, 1799, in Mount Vernon, surrounded by the people he loved.